A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
Star Wars, The High Republic, Starlight Stories, 2022. A compendium of tales from the High Republic era. Originally published in the Star Wars Insider. Edited by Amy Ratcliffe. Created and read by the Archivist Publishing. Introduction. Knights at the Roundtable. An interview with the authors of Star Wars, The High Republic. Project Luminous. A mysterious phrase that crept into Star Wars authors' panel conversations and social media posts during the Star Wars Celebration Chicago in 2019. Fans learned that multiple publishers would be involved with the ambitious initiative, as would authors Claudia Gray, Justina Ireland, Daniel Jose Older, Kevin Scott, and Charles Soule. After months of teasers, Lucasfilm finally pulled back the curtains on February 24, 2020, and unveiled the title of this new saga, Star Wars: The High Republic. The stories of the High Republic, which debuted in January 2021, take place in a new era, some 200 years before the events of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, released in 1999. Publishing partners including Del Rey, Marvel Comics, IDW Publishing, Disney Lucasfilm Press, and more will release stories set in this timeline, a timeline created in partnership with 5 top-flight authors and Lucasfilm. Star Wars Insiders Amy Ratcliffe spoke with the writers and Lucasfilm Publishing creative director Michael Siglain about the upcoming tales. Star Wars Insiders Amy Ratcliffe asked,
"You all worked together at Skywalker Ranch to brainstorm, and we've heard the food there is terrific. So first things first, is there a particular meal you each recall loving?"
Author Daniel Jose Old responded,
"I remember discovering the breakfast that they have, because there are multiple breakfasts. But there's one that they did in the tech building, where they made eggs. Every day was something different, and what joy. What absolute joy."
Author Kevin Scott added,
"I was having about 3 breakfasts per day, I think. I'd have the one in the guest house when I woke up early, because my head was still in UK time. Then they'd put out another buffet breakfast in the guest house, so I'd have one of those. Then I'd wander to the tech building and have that one, as well. Yes, I put on a few pounds."
Author Charles Soule commented,
"We were up there 2 times, and at the end of each time, we would order a huge Chinese meal on the last night, and we would all get plates of it. Then we would sit outside, at the inn. We would all just sit and chat, and it was just really nice. It's a beautiful place anyway. But it felt like the work was done and we were just all together. The food was fine, but the company was better."
Author Claudia Gray added,
"Speak for yourself. The eclairs that we had the first day were amazing. They even had mango puree. The company was fine. The food was great."
Author Justina Ireland added,
"Yes, the main house buffet. It's pretty awesome. I'm a big fan of dessert, so that was my favorite part. And now, the High Republic is a huge cross-publisher event. Mike, how did you pitch the idea and then bring it all together?"
Lucasfilm Publishing creative director Michael Siglain responded, beginning the discussion around the topic of Project Luminous.
The concept of a cross-publisher event was something I first pitched to Kathleen Kennedy and to Kiri Hart in 2014. It just took years of, can we do it now? Is now good? How about now? I had spoken to the publishers individually about the idea of doing something that would be unique to publishing, where we could have a corner of the galaxy that we could call our own. And everyone loved that concept. So when we got toward the end of the Skywalker saga, Kathy said, "Okay, let's start this. What can you do in publishing?" She threw down the gauntlet. The one caveat was that it had to be a Lucasfilm-driven initiative. That allowed us a ton of creative freedom because then we were really in the driver's seat. So, we looked to a bunch of current creators that we considered our all-star Star Wars authors to come and craft this initiative. Then the icing on the cake was saying, now let's all go up to Skywalker Ranch and bring together Story Group and the editorial team and spend a couple days talking about what we love about Star Wars and creating a whole new era to play within.
Star Wars insiders Amy Ratcliffe then asked,
Kevin, we heard you put an idea on the table that helped form the foundation of the High Republic. Is that true?
Author Kevin Scott replied,
Well, what happened was that we all either came with an idea that was pre-formed, or we created an idea during our first week at the ranch. Toward the end of the first week, we each pitched our general idea. Then we went away and added meat to those bones, incorporating new ideas into our original one. My initial idea came from the question, what scares the Jedi? That started us off, but then we began to pull ideas from the other pitches, as well. Soon, we were working on quite an evolved version of it, with everyone else obviously throwing their ideas in.
Amy Ratcliffe followed up with,
In the prequel era, the Jedi Order is bound to the rules and tied closely into the Republic's politics. Is there a political factor to any of your High Republic stories?
Author Charles Soule responded,
How we're approaching the High Republic is that it feels new and fresh. It's an optimistic society. It's a republic that wants to explore its potential through the Chancellor of the time, Lina So. She is extremely influential, but the scope of her influence comes from her optimism, her hope, and her sense that everyone in the Republic is part of the same thing. The slogan that she has promulgated as her rallying cry for the Republic is, "We are all the Republic." That's something people now say throughout all of the planets of the galaxy. The dividing lines that we later see in the prequel era are between separatists, and so on. Those things don't exist here yet, and the overriding belief is that it's a time when people can come together to bring the galaxy forward. Lina So has an expansive program of what are called Great Works that are designed to bring the High Republic to a new level, and also propagate its principles and policies to new worlds.
Amy Ratcliffe then asked,
Justina, your High Republic story, A Test of Courage, features the youngest Jedi we know, the Nostro. What world building did you get to explore with her?
Author Justina Ireland replied,
The inciting incident of the story is about a diplomatic envoy, with a group ambassadors traveling the inner rim, from outer rim planet to planet. None of these planets are part of the Republic. Later, during the time of the Phantom Menace, we see the Senate where there are hundreds and hundreds of planets represented. But at some point, those planets had to decide to join the Republic. This is that period of expansion. Part of that story is exploring what it looks like to be a young Jedi who gets sent on a diplomatic boondoggle, which is an official term, and things go wrong that have to be addressed. To have a kid's book that strips away those politics of the larger Star Wars era has always felt wrong. A lot of the conversation in the book is about what happens when certain people don't want to join the Republic. It's really about giving child characters a moment to have those very adult experiences in a more microcosm-type way, on a smaller scale. It's about reconciling the idea of, I have these teachings behind me, but now I'm going up against people who don't have those same beliefs. How do we reconcile and realize that we all want the same thing? How do we look at our interactions with one another and make the best choice, not just for ourselves, but for everyone?
Amy Ratcliffe said,
Claudia, your book, Into the Dark, features another young Jedi going out on an adventure, but he isn't maybe as excited about it as others. Tell us more about him.
Claudia Gray responded,
Reith is still a Padawan, unlike Vern, and he's looking forward to seeing her again as their friends. But he really has been a little bit more sheltered than the average Padawan. Also, his master is on the Jedi Council and has been much more centered on Coruscant than the average Jedi would be for that period of time. But now she's taken the job to be the head of Starlight Beacon, so he's going to the frontier, and he does not want to do that at all. He doesn't lack courage or ability, I want to be clear about that, but let's just say there are some of us that really like being around books. In Chapter 1 he says, adventure is a euphemism for going places with lots of bugs. I think that's absolutely true. He winds up with some adult Jedi, being marooned on a very mysterious, very ancient space station that is full of surprises, dark and otherwise.
Changing the topic slightly, Amy Ratcliffe asked,
Flipping over to the comic book side of things, Daniel, who are the main crew, will be spending time within the High Republic adventures from IDW Comics?
Daniel Jose Old replied,
One aspect I've been looking at very carefully is what it's like to be a young person in a time of gigantic change. Here, these kids who are on the front lines, as young Jedi, get to experience it and be sent out into the world, and really just have a very first-hand view of how the galaxy is changing. We're in this time of prosperity and it is a high moment in the Republic, but that also means that when things don't go well, it's very striking and very sudden. As a result, they learn hard lessons of their own vulnerability, as well as their own place in the world. They have to actually take action to be a part of that, whether that means through investigation or just being friends to each other, or actually being in the middle of combat and war. All those different things are explored. That's the larger piece, but then we have Lula, a young Padawan who is very invested in the Jedi Order and developing into the greatest Jedi that she can possibly become. We also have her really good friend Farzala, who's kind of mischievous. Then, they make friends with other people along the way. It's a really exciting adventure story to write, and it's great to follow these characters and get to have an interaction with some old favorites as well as new friends along the way.
Amy Ratcliffe asked,
Charles, you're launching it all with Light of the Jedi. What's it like to be setting up this era?
Charles Soule responded,
Well, it's an honor and privilege, as they say. It's also incredibly terrifying and pressure-filled, but it's a job that I'm very excited to have. Obviously, the good thing about it is that all the ideas in Light of the Jedi come from all the discussions that we've been having over the last 2 years. It's great to have this team to draw upon. Yes, I'm writing it, but we're all in it together. We all kick ideas around, and everybody's helping to make it as strong as it can be. I think that's true of all the projects, which has been really great. As far as writing it, the job of this project, because it is the first one out of the gate, is to introduce this time period to the readers in a very specific way, to make it clear that this is different from Star Wars that we've seen before. At the same time, the book needs to deliver a very exciting action story, introduce a ton of Jedi like Avar Kriss, and a load of really cool people from the Republic, like the Chancellor I mentioned earlier, while at the same time introduce the Nihil, the villains of the piece who will be causing a lot of trouble. As I mentioned earlier, the High Republic is a very optimistic, idealistic society that believes the wind is at their back, and that they're going to be able to do great things in the galaxy. Not everybody agrees with that, and they have some huge things to overcome. That's the Nihil. It really goes to some cool places.
Amy Ratcliffe then asked,
Finally, Kevin, you're writing the Star Wars, the High Republic series for Marvel Comics. What are the challenges that your characters will be facing?
Kevin Scott replied with,
Like Daniel, I'm excited because we're telling the story of a team of Jedi. You normally only see the Jedi going off in twos, but this is a proper group of Jedi who are working together, and it's all based around Keeve Trennis, who is a very capable Jedi. Unlike Reef, she really wants to get out there, so she's very excited when she's posted to Starlight. But she also doesn't feel worthy to be there. Keeve finds herself surrounded by this group of Jedi, who are all legendary figures. You've got Avar Kriss, who Charles introduces in his book first of all. Everyone thinks she's the best of the best, and Keeve is absolutely in awe of her. You've got a Trandoshan Jedi, Skier, who's been around seemingly forever, and is really grumpy. You have Maru, who meditates through multitasking, and is constantly surrounded by data pads lying around him. Then you have a pair of siblings, Terek and Seret, that share one mind between them. Keeve has to keep up with all these people, and so she struggles completely through all of that. But again, it's all about how the characters work together and the lessons they can learn from each other, including how to be a Jedi in service in the best way.
Amy Ratcliffe followed up with,
You have already mentioned the Nihil as a foe, but are they the only villains your various characters will face?
Kevin Scott said,
The Drengir are a species of sentient, carnivorous plant creatures who spore over a certain section of the galaxy near the frontier where our characters are. Throughout all of this, as we've been saying, the High Republic is our Camelot, and with that we mean both Arthurian Camelot and also 1960s Americana. But obviously, just like in both those eras, they hit problems early on. It's about how these Jedi and the Republic members cope with these issues as they present themselves. On one side you've got the Nile, who are these pirate raiders, and on the other side, you've got this creeping horror that no one really understands yet. Are these just beasts or monsters? We know they're vegetation, but they seem to be spreading throughout the population, even to planets. They're popping up here, there, and everywhere, and we don't know, at first, if they are sentient, or whether they have a reason for doing what they're doing. It's seeding, every pun intended, distrust and fear in the frontier at a time where everyone has been saying, it's all going to be okay. It's exciting to be dealing with some of the threats that no one even expected to exist.
Claudia Gray added,
One thing that seems great about this mysterious station is that it's so lush with plant life. It's almost like this oasis in the middle of the galaxy, but they don't quite realize that the Drengir are there, already. The reasons why they don't know that, and how the Drengir wound up on that station, are all in the final third of the book, so I'm really loath to talk too much about it, at this time.
Charles Soule also added,
Claudia, that space station sounds super cool. Has it popped up anywhere else?
Claudia Gray responded,
It has shown up before, so comic readers have already seen it and they may recognize it.
Finally, Amy Ratcliffe ended the discussion with her final question.
In conclusion, which 2 words would you use to describe each of your stories?
Charles Soule added,
Badass and grand.
Daniel Jose Old said,
Dangerous shenanigans.
Justina Ireland added,
Space hijinks.
Claudia Gray said,
Surprising space station.
Finally, Kevin Scott added,
Epic and personal.
This book was developed 100% using artificial intelligence to generate realistic and familiar voices